long trip. After Hawaii. That's crazy. I'm glad they can do that. I'm glad. I'm welcome to Parent Conversations. We have Michelle Linford with us again today, and she is talking, we have digital wellness, and she's talking about well-being. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or just chime in or put it in the chat, and we'll get to you. I'll be moderating. My name is Megan. I'm with My Discovery Destination, and these are possible because of grants from Bear River Health Department, the Central Utah Public Health Department, and Davis County Health Departments. So Michelle, it is all you.
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Been having some issues with PowerPoint, so I'm glad it's working. Welcome to our digital wellness, where we'll be talking about well-being today. We either start or end with this quote, and it seemed fitting to begin with it today, given our topic. We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. We need not wait to see what others do. And one of our favorites, well, these are both favorites, in the attention economy, mindfulness is activism. And the questions we'll review today really are about awareness, as we've talked about so much through this course to this point. We'll do our normal check-in and topic review. We'll start with a discussion about the tools that you use most. That will be a springboard into our discussion using the Digital Wellness Institute survey questions on well-being as our guide today. And I'll share some tips and resources around well-being. So that's our outline for today. You all have had experience with us to this point to know that we start with a check-in because that concept of self-awareness is so critical to digital wellness. So I invite you to take a moment to write down, or if you're not in a position to write down 3 words that or think about 3 words that describe how you are feeling at the moment. Does anybody want to share one of their words? I think we have time for this today.
I can share too. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, relieved.
Okay, I'm just going to ask the why behind that one.
Well, as you know, I'm with my husband on a little vacation, and we're doing open water swimming in the ocean, and it's a little shocking to me and scary. So I completed my first day and I'm alive and relieved.
We're relieved you're alive too. Megan, were you going to jump in with something?
Yeah, it's funny, Jan took one of my words. I might be a little sad, but I'm also relieved. Sometimes when something changes in your life, you might be a little sad to see it go, but it brings relief. So you've got some mixed emotions going on.
I like that we identified that. Thanks. Thank you for sharing, friends. Part 2 of our check-in is always about reflecting on the last week. The invitations that we gave last week were, again, if you haven't taken the survey, to take that. And there's a second survey, their digital connectedness survey, to try one new relationships practice or share and discuss one of the principles that we talked about. And I'd just like to open this up for the rest of, each week as this last week's. Just if you have any digital wellness successes or experiences to share. And I'll actually start today because I also want to illustrate a principle that, each week we talk about a lot of things. We talk about a lot of principles and ideas and tips. And this is never meant to be an 8-week, 8-week and then it's over. We're hoping that as you hear these things that you can treasure them up, and then when the time's right, that something can emerge that can help you. And for me, one of the concepts has emerged. It's actually kind of a joke with my family and others that I always have way too many tabs open. And the idea of reducing tabs has settled on me this week, and I've been simplifying my tabs, and it's been really awesome. So, anyone else?
I want to just share. As I was walking to my room this morning to join this meeting, I happened to see a news TV thing talking about Facebook and our children, and just the urgency and the immediacy of Congress trying to take care of this huge problem. And I just thought, I have gotten, I don't think I have things figured out, but the concept of put on your own mask first and understand your own relationship with this digital world and how you can be more settled and then mirror that for others. I've started to see that happen just a little step by step, and I'm excited to maybe as I share different things that we've talked about in our classes, especially like that last one by the MIT woman who talked about on her TEDx talk. These things are starting to impact those I share them with too. And I just appreciate that whole concept. There is something that can happen in this digital chaos, and we don't have to rely on Congress because we know how reliable Congress is, as well as social media and everything else. But if there is some opportunity for us to actually do something about this, and I'm just starting to really feel that the evidence points to that.
That reflects that research too from James Fowler and Nicholas Christakis, that if we make changes in our own lives, it has the potential to reach 3 degrees out, even with people we don't know. It's exciting. All right, if no one else wants to share, we'll move on. I wanted to let you know that last week we did a Stories Connect People activity. This is something that we typically do in longer meetings to begin the meeting, to connect as humans. And I created a document that has the Stories Connect People activity questions that we've used throughout this course and in other settings, so that you can use that with your family. Last week I explained that the organization that helped us understand this basic concept and building it into our rhythm the founders come from a family of 10, and they discovered not only did it make a difference in their organizational work, but they learned things about their family members that they never knew. And stories and conversations, as Sherry Turkle from MIT talks about, can really help build relationships. So there's another resource for you. And I'll send that link to Megan to send out with the slides. All right, let's start our topical conversation. Actually, I had that backwards. We will be talking about well-being, and you can see that our model, the visual model, tries to show the relationship, kind of the expansive relationship of the topics that we discuss. We start at the center with our core values, vision, intentions, whatever words you want to use. And when we start with that grounding, then we can move into mental and physical wellness, honoring time, and relationships. And it's really a combination of those things that then can impact and influence our well-being. So here we are talking about well-being this week, and we'll start with this question. What devices, tools, or apps do you use most? So this could be, I use my laptop the most, or I use my tablet the most, or apps like Instagram or Marco Polo, or meditation apps or whatever. What do you use the most?
I use Zoom a lot.
Yay for Zoom. Anyone else?
Well,
Texting.
I live in Facebook and Goose Chase.
That
And-
makes sense.
And the Discovery app, actually. Yeah, so those three, that's pretty much where I spend my time.
And I
And
heard,
it's work related, of course.
what about for personal? What tools do you use the most on that side?
I use
I have personal-
messenger apps, texting apps.
I think I heard someone else say text too. Was that Jan?
Yeah. Texting. Jan.
And Shirley, you said something as well. I just want to make sure everybody's heard.
I was just wondering if I have a personal life. I really don't. So
Hey, I know your kids reach out to you from time to time, but they probably just call you.
Well, last week
yeah,
you
they
shared
do.
a little
They
about
do.
your. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, we FaceTime and Messenger.
But you have
So-
that connection through your week.
Yeah.
All right. So with that in mind, with the technology that you use, here are the 5 questions from the Digital Wellness Institute's survey. This is the well-being section. Question number 1 is, I feel happy. And then of course, these are questions that you can take and bring home to your families. I feel happy when I use my favorite media, online game, favorite social media, online game, or application. This can also be tool, device, fill in the blank. This week is designed to be very discussion heavy. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, and my thought on this is, wow, it totally depends. Because usually, yes, usually I will confess, and everybody, I mean, most of you here will know, last night, nothing made me happy because I had way too much coming at me at all the same time. So no, last night, none of it made me happy because it was just more weight. But normally, yeah, I love what I do. I love, the connections that are made. So this is really dependent on the moment and how much of it's happening all at once.
Which is actually a really great insight on this question, that and really goes back to our check-in, to do a check-in at any time in the day, because it makes sense that this is going to be a dynamic answer depending on everything else that's going on. And the whole intention of this topic is to be aware so that we can plug in at any moment and say, maybe I need a break because at the moment this isn't working for me, even though most of the time it does. Or, so thank you for illustrating such a true principle here. Anyone else?
I was actually thinking the same thing. It depends on what's going on as to how happy I feel when using my favorite app.
In fact, as you say that, Megan, it makes me think of Nir Eyal and talking about how our internal triggers have such an impact on, on the impact of our digital use. And in fact, I have a couple of follow-up questions. What does it mean to be happy? And is feeling happy always the goal of online activities? So for example, there are some people, when Jan and I first started working together, we were focused on pornography prevention for children. And that's a pretty heavy topic, where you're reading, stories that are sometimes just devastating. And so we weren't always happy in the work that we're doing, but because it was values driven, because we had that centered approach, that helped buffer. And so there are a lot of tensions in these questions. And in fact, the idea of this all of these questions actually will be relevant in the last two conversations that we have. All right, question number 2. I derive a lot of fulfillment from connecting with my friends and family online.
That
So
depends too.
tell me more what that means.
That
to you.
depends on what's going on in the relationship and what you're connecting about. Does that make sense?
Very much so, yes.
Okay.
That reflects my experience too. I want to stay connected, but the means and medium or context or situation, it depends.
Yeah, and see, I would say the same thing. For the most part, it's almost always a yes. But again, if there's just too much coming at me, then even the kids, calling to connect is just kind of the last straw. It's like, you know what, let me call you back after I'm on top of life.
That's where that idea of time boxing or something can come in too, because we do need to honor our time, whatever that may mean at any given time, right?
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'm the one that's difficult with the time boxing. So here I come again. Because so interestingly, I usually don't reach out to my kids because I don't want to interrupt their time, but I love to have them reach out to me. And I love for them, like my daughter, a lot of times when she reaches out, it's because she's seeking my opinion on something, or, maybe she's having a rough day and she just wants to talk. And I love the fact that I'm that person now that we have that kind of relationship. We didn't necessarily always when she was a teen. There was a year there. And so I love that they reach out to me, and I wouldn't want to time box them and say, hey, we're going to talk, just during these times, because I like the fact that I get to see them in the raw, real,
in the moment.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So,
And I was actually meaning more time boxing the work when you're stressed, so that interruptions are pleasant. Most of the time, if I have a child call, I'm like, yep, I am going to drop what I'm doing and I'll focus on this, and then I'll go back.
Yep.
There will be times where I have to block off some time because of deadlines or whatever. So I meant more time boxing on the work stuff, not the children. That works. I can relate to what you're saying, I guess is what I'm saying. But everybody's got to find what works for them. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next one?
Nope.
Okay. We have a small group today. So here, because we're creating artifacts from our meetings, our gatherings with you, I try to bring things in that help connect from week to week. So just a reminder too, Jan, thank you for bringing this up, Sherry Turkle's talk about the difference between, this is something I've been thinking about. She helped me really see things a little differently. I use the word connection a lot because human connection is such an important need, and that's so central to wellness. I really liked the distinction she made between connection, which can be blips of, pixelized whatever, versus the difference between connection that sometimes can be more surface on through digital tools, and holding space for conversation and building those relationships more deeply. And I've noticed the difference between the relationships that stay a little bit more at the texting, kind of level, versus where it's stop and talk and, like we were saying, Shirley, kind of drop everything and have that conversation in the moment with somebody who matters. There is a difference, and it's pretty profound. And just put this image back in as well. Go ahead, Jen.
I just wonder, Michelle and I talked about that, the difference between connection and conversation. And that your comment on, I believe, was it your mother-in-law, on how she liked to get the whole family together, but recognized that was an opportunity for connections. Surface, hellos, how you do-dos. And then what was the contrast with that?
She's talked about the contrast between having large group family gatherings and having one family at her home alone,
Yes.
and the difference that she feels when she's able to spend that more focused, deeper time
with one family.
With one family. She has 8 children, so.
Yeah, and I just liked how you said that she recognized that then she was able to have conversations. And I have 8 children too, so maybe that's why I related so well to this. But and I come from a family of 10, and I noticed, people love to get together, but it was just so surfacey, and you don't have time, and you're looking after your children and running from one thing to another, just trying to get a meal on a table. But when you and that fulfills a very important need for everybody. But the difference between that and conversations, my daughter just made a very interesting comment. She lives in Denmark, and she talked about how much she enjoyed when we had a family trip this year for the first time. And all of our kids were able to come, and I don't know how many years it's been or if it's ever happened, but we were all there together. And she just said, it was so different, and I felt I could relax with people and talk to them. Usually when we come to Utah, you guys are all working, and that's understandable, but you have your lives, and we can't enjoy that different level of being with you and getting to know you. So there's just something in an investment in time and in people's presence that is deeper. And she was recognizing that in a very literal sense.
So we can see that this definitely isn't just a digital principle. And in fact, we can go to this next slide and say, that whether it's in a digital setting, a digital environment, or in our real life, as it were, face to face, the same dynamics can happen. We can get together. People say you can be lonely in a crowd. That we can be lonely in our relationships if we don't take the time to build them, which goes back to that. Even the Stories Connect People activity, making deliberate time to connect at a deeper level builds relationships and is so good for our human wellness, because we are wired for connection. So thank you for sharing that, Jen. Here's the third question, and all of these really do have tensions. So I'm loving that the tensions are naturally emerging in our conversations. Using social media or any media, because that could include news or, you know, any kind of technology makes me feel pessimistic. How do you experience this?
If I spend too much time scrolling through it and reading too many political posts, I agree. But generally speaking, not so much.
The research bears that out, that when we are more deliberate, we feel better. That's really interesting that you would say that. I mean, interesting, not surprising, because that's what the research says. So again, being deliberate can make a difference on how we feel. Anyone else?
Well, I would just say how we use it. I mean, because I'm so busy using it as work, I really don't do the whole scrolling thing. When I'm doing social media, it's usually I mean, I'm seeing the uplifting memes and the positive, you know, I mean, to me, social media is a positive. Now, there certainly are, I mean, I've had some negative experiences. But as a general rule, social media is a real positive to me, but part of that is because I'm very intentional in how I use it. And I look for the positive. I use it to find the positive.
It's one of your great strengths. And it shows the reality too of algorithms, that what we send out does often come back. If we're posting and trying to post positive things, the likelihood of positive things coming back goes higher. Anyone else? Thanks for sharing, Shirley. And thanks for all you do to use tech for good. I'll just add a thought here. The ideas or the research around negative news is definitely true for me. I can get I like to be informed, but I can get sucked into sort of the negative approach to headlines. And because again, technology in that setting is designed to grab your attention, and human nature is such that the negative often grabs attention. And when I took a little bit of a break from some of my news resources, one of the allegedly most reputable resources that I've used, relatively speaking, I would say it's one of the most reputable. I started to notice that, yeah, they do the same thing. A lot of their headlines are just really, a Spanish word comes to mind, really heavy, pesado. So a lot depends on how and when and what. I have the same experience though on social media that you were talking about, Shirley, that I enjoy sharing uplifting content, and it often in my feed often will come back, and that's gratifying.
Well, and actually, Michelle, in response to what you were saying, part of the thing, let's see, how do I say what I'm thinking? When you bring up like the news, at this point in life, I've just given up. I don't trust any news. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. There is not a single news source out there that I really, well, that's not true. I do have my news sources, but the general news that most people would look at, I don't know if I'm getting the truth or not. So I've just quit, which is not necessarily a positive thing. I mean, sometimes I look at it and I think, you know what? You know, I don't necessarily know what's going on in the world, and that's not necessarily something I would recommend. But at the same time, that's part of why I just don't go there, because I don't trust. I don't trust any of the headlines. I don't, even the news that I hear, I don't know if it's true or not. And so I just don't waste my time on any of it, which can also be a negative. Because some people would say, you know nothing about what's going on in the world, and they wouldn't be far from wrong.
It's such a such a valid point, though, and it relates to, I think we'll be switching media literacy and digital citizenship and start with media literacy next week. And this is one of the challenges, that if we want to get into the news, if we're really going to start to get at least an idea of what's going on, we have to spend the time. Because if we're just skimming headlines, there's no way to really know, right? We have to do some research and watch for patterns and invest. And A, it's hard to find the time and the balance of everything. And B, like you said, it's hard to find the truth. And because there is so much of bias and emotional driving of content, it's a real challenge. So I mean, we could have a whole just one discussion on that, and on sifting through news media and what works for people and what doesn't. It's a difficult. I think it's always been difficult. You know, imagine getting if all you got was your local paper, and maybe you got a national paper, and you're only privy to what they choose to put in, right?
And they're putting their twist on it.
Exactly.
You can see a report on the exact same event, and it does not even sound like the same,
exactly,
like the same world. And it's a matter of, so it's not really even a matter of finding like the truth. When I said like trusted, there are a few trusted sources, but even that, I'm well aware of the fact that it's just that I agree with them. I have the same perceptions that they have, but I'm very aware that, I mean, there are a million different news articles out there about the exact same topic, the exact same event, and they're going to sound totally different. They will sound nothing like.
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, just yeah, I was done.
It's so completely true. I had an experience last night where I pulled out a story from a source I don't typically read, and it was so interesting to see that different spin on similar topics. And it's actually that is how I try to start to understand the issues. Maybe finding the truth is a little different. Maybe it's more about at least understanding the range of views on an issue, and then trying to figure out where I stand, you know. But I can't figure that out unless I read a wide range of lenses, because each one really does sound like this is the truth, the end, rely on us. And, you know, so see, we could talk about this. Don't hesitate to bring this up next week when we talk about media literacy. All right, here is question 4. Digital applications or social media give me the opportunity for self-expression. In the social connectedness survey, they use the word self-presentation. And while you're thinking about that question, I just have a couple of follow-up thought questions. What does self-expression even mean? Or what does it look like to or for you? And how do you determine how, when, where, why, and with whom to engage in such self-expression online? Inherent for me is the question, is self-expression online always desired? So we'll review one. This is a snippet from the social connectedness survey from one of the sections on authentic self-presentation. I show my true self online. I think the idea there is, am I the same person, you know, or am I putting on a show or some sort of mirage online, or do I have integrity across? The Digital Citizenship Institute talks about, you know, being the same person online as off. I allow my social network to see who I really am. What I post online reflects who I really am. I feel comfortable presenting who I truly am online in the same way I do offline. And when interacting online, I feel comfortable presenting the person I am. So now I'll go back to the question with those things in mind. Do digital applications or social media give you the opportunity for self-expression? How do you feel about self-expression online? Any thoughts?
So again, and I think I've probably shared this before, but for me, I mean, yeah, absolutely. My first response to this was yes, it absolutely gives me the opportunity for self-expression. I'm also very aware that, I mean, I believe in posting positive. I don't, you know, I don't need to go when I'm having a bad day. Social media is not where I go to post that, you know what, life just really sucks right now or whatever. But I don't do that in real life either. So I feel like I am consistent. I mean, I put out positives. I believe in, you know, the law of attraction or law of faith, whatever you want to call it. I try to put out positives in online and in person. Now, would you go back to the other slide? There was one comment I wanted to make on
Which
that.
one? This one or that one?
Yes, this one right here.
Okay.
No, yeah, go back to the other one that you had. The one thing that really jumped out to me at that, for some reason, it just keeps going back to the other. I'm not seeing it. Is anybody else?
I'm sorry, which one do you want?
The one that lists the different areas.
This one?
I think the green one, the green
one,
text. Yeah.
Yes, that one.
This one? Okay. Thank
So
you.
the thing that really popped out to me in this one, as I read through them, I mean, it was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I got down to the last one. When interacting online, I feel comfortable presenting the person I am. And I realized that is changing. Not because, you know, I mean, I do like to my friends and to whatever, I feel comfortable presenting the person I am, but we live in a world where I think that is becoming less and less. I mean, I don't really, there are times when I don't present who I really am, because you just never know who's going to be offended by it, who's going to take it wrong, who's going to, I feel like we live in a world where none of us are really able to be who we are as much, because there are just people out there looking to be offended and looking to take it wrong and looking to misconstrue it. And
the algorithms feed off of that. In fact, you know, they may put content into someone's feed to try to stoke that. So
yeah,
it's
so
a real thing. Yeah.
A lot of times I will just not say, not be who I really am, because it's like, you know what, let's just not, it doesn't need to be said. It could be misunderstood, or
my approach to things has changed in the last year for similar reasons, in terms of how much and what to share online. And it for me, it goes back to when we talked about honoring time. The reason that we use the language honoring time instead of just productivity is that it really is like, is this where I want to spend my time and my energy? And when that kind of conversation starts to emerge with the misunderstanding, it's really hard to navigate that in an online space. So thank you for bringing that up. I had the same, it's interesting, the patterns that are showing up. I'm relating to so much of what's being said. That question kind of stopped me as well. Anyone else? You can see how these kinds of questions, if you have teens or young adult children, these kinds of conversations could be really valuable to have with our families as well. All right, the fifth question. This is the fifth and final question from this digital wellness, the digital well-being section of the DWI survey. Digital applications or social media inspire me to get out of my comfort zone. So here's another tension. When they talk about the comfort zone, this could be regarded not just, it can be creative expression and putting your, you know, maybe taking a risk and sharing some of your creative work, and also civically getting out of your comfort zone. We do all have our biases and our silos that we can get into in real life and digitally. And so digital media can be a tool to try to get out of the comfort zone. But what are your thoughts on this?
well, I don't want to be the only one talking. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm taking up so much time.
Well,
I
we have a small group and I think some people, may have things going on in the background. So,
I kind of had to laugh when I saw this because the first thought that came to me is, first of all, I don't necessarily, I don't think that social media really inspires me to get out of my comfort zone. Maybe just because I'm really comfortable doing what I do anyway. But I had to chuckle because when it's the civic engagement, that's exactly what I'm trying to get other people to do through what I do online.
That thought crossed my mind too, Shirley.
Yeah, we're trying to get people to, we're trying to kind of get into to their space and get them to come out of their comfort zone and get more involved in civic engagement. And so I had to laugh about that.
that's an interesting lens on it. Megan, do you want to add to that?
Not necessarily. Maybe I've gotten out of my comfort zone a little bit because of the work I have done on social media.
So it may depend on our roles and responsibilities.
Yes, for sure.
That's an interesting facet to add. Yeah. And I really like too that you have a lens on civic engagement that isn't just political, but that is get involved in your community. That's a really important piece of civic engagement that I think is often missed.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we do. But here's another way to look at it. When it says, getting out of my comfort zone, I mean, I feel like I'm very comfortable with what I do, but I guess the other way I could look at it is because of what I do. I mean, I have had to become very creative in doing like the graphics that I create, and I've really learned to do that. But yeah, so I guess that has been getting out of comfort zone
and building skills too, which is great. I'll share one experience. I'll share a couple of things. One, this year I followed through with I guess you could say it was a goal to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone and sing in a virtual choir, which was really vulnerable, to record myself, send it in, and then be, included in this virtual choir. So that was a fun, but really kind of scary experience. But I'm really glad I did it. I pushed myself beyond my comfort zone. And I will sometimes use social media to try to understand differing points of view. Going back to the news media or social issues or political issues or cultural issues, I do try to use social and news media to understand. So, like, I will sometimes read the comments on a story, even though they say never read the comments because they can often get really intense. But when I'm in a good place, trying to expose myself to other ideas is important to me. So these tools can be used. Again, though, the difference between, like you said, Megan, earlier, if I'm just scrolling, not a good idea. If I'm deliberately trying to understand,
I
various
usually
points
avoid
of
that.
view.
Sometimes I get sucked in. Sorry if I stepped over the top.
No, you're
but
fine.
I try and just I'm like, what am I doing? And then I get on there and do what I'm supposed to do and get off.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because that can make such a difference. So keep these concepts in mind because we will be, they are relevant to the topics we'll be talking about next week. Because of time, because we've lingered in these conversations, I will, like we've done before, leave this section as a reference, although let me walk really quickly through a couple of these.
You have time. Don't worry, Michelle.
Are we okay? Okay. If you children or grandchildren use YouTube, we recently shared some tips as my church came out with this new program, Come Draw With Me, on YouTube. So kids can, learn how to draw. It's a really great idea. And you could see that some parents were like, YouTube, children. So here are some tips if you do have children who are using YouTube. I'm sure you've talked about this a bazillion times, to have the device in a public area and within your visual field and earshot at the very least. But here's some specific YouTube tips that you may know, but just wanted to review them in case you don't, or so that you can share them with others. Turn off autoplay. So the default on most of these tools is autoplay. Why? Because they want to keep us hooked. They want to keep us in their content, because then we see more ads. That can avoid rabbit holes. And for children, I mean, some of the sidebar videos, they're just so inane, and you never know, they could run into worse content. Put the video on full screen so that the sidebar isn't even visible. Before your child or grandchild uses the tool, sit down, get through that initial ad, because they almost always include one. And they're starting to include, if a video gets more and more attention, or if you watch something more and more, they may add ads in the middle or at the end. I have some favorite meditation, recordings that I listen to, and I'm in this wonderful, peaceful state. And then there's an ad at the end that jolts me out of my Zen moment.
I've noticed that too with some of the relaxing music I listen to. There's an ad right in the middle. I'm like, where did that come from?
You can see that they're really pressing for you to pay, right? Pay to not have the ads, but to put them in the middle and the end. The more you use something, the more likely it is that it'll show up, is what I've observed anyway. And also agree together with your child on, this would be a good time box. Okay, we're only going to do it for this amount of time, to model that and help them learn that skill. And the single tasking, let's focus on this right now. And Shirley, you will, of course, recognize what I'm talking about here, but whenever possible, use the technology with your child, so that if and as, especially, there's skill building going on, you can be there for positive reinforcement, because that can reinforce principles of social development strategy, which is a protective factor. I love this tip from Better Screen Time, to assign specific tasks to each device. So going back to our original question, what devices do you use? For example, with their iPad, they only use it for piano lessons and movie making in the family movie night. No games, no play on that device. Chromebook is used for school mostly, and an occasional supervised free time. And she has limits on her phone, like she won't use her personal phone for work email. And there's no one right way to do this, but I loved her ideas about that. Wired Human, I'll let you, this is more to kind of sit and really soak in, but they reinforce, both Better Screen Time and Wired Human reinforce a values-centered approach to digital health with children and youth. And they point out what we've talked about this whole series, that unhealthy choices are a poor attempt to meet our real needs. So understanding our internal weather and helping our children do that is so important. And I mentioned that Jan and I started working together around pornography prevention. We aren't speaking about that specifically in this series, but I did want to include a few resources here because we know that a lot of parents are concerned about it. There's a link to the social connectedness survey. I encourage you to look through that. And just want to conclude with any thoughts that you have of what you might want to work on this week, or what stood out to you. And at the very least, we just want to invite everyone to keep paying attention. How you feel when you're using your devices. Any thoughts for the coming week?
I was just going to say, I think that is the thing that I have enjoyed most about this, and really going back even to the previous sessions that we did. I just have been so much more aware, and I mean, aware when the notification pops on and, there's that headline. I make a conscious decision. I'm like, you know what? Nope, I don't have time. Not going to go look. So I just appreciate that this has made me more aware of what I'm doing online.
Thank you for that feedback. And I'm thrilled to hear that, because it has done the same for me. And it makes a difference to come awake a little more, doesn't it? Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As I said, I think next week we'll focus on media literacy first, and hat tip to Sherry, who helped pull together a hunt around that for a Digit Summit presentation that we did. I'm really excited for this community to be able to use that tool as well.
Yeah, I think it turned out really fun. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Oh, excuse me, I've got something in my throat. But we also will have an adventure to go with that. So
It's
be ready,
really
right?
excited about that. Thanks for all your work with that, friend. And thank you for the opportunity to explore and learn with you about these important topics. Look forward to seeing you next week.